It's a great honour to speak to everyone today, and a little daunting. It's my first time presenting on Zoom to a national, and I just heard international audience, so that's terrifying. I'd rather be standing in front of you speaking. I've been asked to speak about biophilic design, a theory and practice, its innate impact on my architecture and the positive effect it can have on our lives as a community. We'll look at the theory, its history, certification, and how humans' attraction to nature, and in particular wood, is key to our aesthetic, intellectual, cognitive, and even spiritual satisfaction. And to finish, I have a rally call for all of you who are in the timber industry. I'd like to firstly acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which I sit today, the Wadandi people of the proud Noongar Nation, their elders past, present, and emerging. I acknowledge the Noongar people as the traditional owners and custodians of the southwest of WA, from Kalbarri to Esperance, and their role as the first forest managers. The forests of the southwest have provided the Noongar people with timber for shelter, spears, tools, implements, food and medicine for the past 45,000 years, and to this day are a key part of their social lives, holding an important place in their cultural, spiritual, mythological and ceremonial practices. Using their traditional fire stick farming method of burning the forest, the Noongars ensured its continuous supply of fresh vegetation, access to their food sources, and ease of travel through the forest that we still enjoy today. I initially delivered a version of this lecture late in 2019. At the time, there were devastating Amazonian wildfires, the climate emergency declared protests, and WA's once-in-a-generation recession were in the news. All before what has come since: a worldwide pandemic, millions dead or infected, a mental health crisis from home, all while the climate emergency continues unabated. A summer of bushfires surrounded Perth, government stimulus packages that have, you don't need to be in here, it's fine, that have created a building boom, while supply chain issues for all in the construction industry increased. Is it right? Is it okay?
Yep.
Okay, just checking. Can you all hear me? We're in the midst of a significant point in history where the health and well-being of our communities and environmental sustainability are at the forefront. And with them, the amazing potential of wood and timber is being realised. As I would do on any project or talk, I consider the local context. As this is a national and international audience, and I am a working architect in the southwest of Australia, one of the most isolated places in the world, I thought it's prudent to highlight the different narrative we find ourselves here in WA compared to our East Coast cousins in relation to timber in construction, framed construction that is. Timber framing has a long history, as we all know. Examples have been found across Europe, the Middle East and Asia. The earliest evidence of timber frame construction dates back to 200 BC in India. Today, lightweight framing construction in timber and steel is the most common construction system used in Australia. Well, that is, except for here in WA, in particular Perth. See the slide, please. I think this graphic, let's check the slides moving. I think this graphic of the 2018 Australian Construction Insights report on framing material use in residential architecture says it all. Brick is best in WA. Up to 2015, the Perth framed housing market was about 2 to 3%, with double brick construction dominating, as has been the case in Perth since the 1950s or thereabouts. Worth noting is the fact that over 80% of our housing in WA is constructed by project design and construct builders looking to reduce margin, increase profits with cookie cutter designs that do not consider necessarily environmental or financial sustainability for the end user. When suggesting timber frame construction to clients from the ages of 40 up, the responses here in Perth are fast and furious. I don't want to cut down old growth forests. Timber frame construction doesn't hold its value. What about fire? Don't the buildings creak, termites, etc., etc. Even when presented with the environmental and sustainability qualities of timber, clients prefer to use the low performing brick. 11 years ago, and I apologise for the quality of these photos, but 11 years ago, my partner architect Neil County and I built a house a framed two-storey house for our blended family of 8. Agents were aghast, high-end resi builders laughed at us, and we struggled to find trades that had any experience in timber framed housing. I still take future clients to our house to demonstrate timber framing and the cost savings. But we also future-proofed our house value with the use of some rammed earth and brick at the front to fool the average punter. While times are changing and many architects, including my practice, are now designing timber framed houses, often the clients are from over east or overseas. But why is this so? In 2018, we completed a wonderful little project, the refurbishment of the Marshall Clifton State Timber Museum in Manjimup. We hoped that the refurbishment of the building and the updated exhibition would educate, inform and inspire visitors. Now we have again opened to the rest of Australia, finally, I recommend a visit to this stunning part of WA and to this little museum to find out more about the state's timber industry and the current forestry practices. In addition to restoring the listed building, our team liaised with a local working group comprising Aboriginal elders and generations of the forestry industry to research, design and prepare the updated interpretive exhibition, which won the National Museums and Gallery Award for Exhibition and Fed Art a couple of years ago. During this process, we learned so much about the industry, its history, including the many lives that have been lost. This is a memorial that we did which shows the hundreds of lives lost. In 1922, the esteemed leader of the timber industry, Charles Edward Lane Poole, said, "The day might come when the people of the state realise that their forests have value." In WA, that started in the 1970s, when there were two inextricably linked events or actions that are still indelibly inked on all West Australian psyche. And I believe anecdotally affect the public's perception of wood in this state. What came first were the anti-logging protests, running for over 30 years from the early 70s to the early 2000s. To give you some perspective, I had just started primary school when they commenced and was a mother of 3 children and pregnant with my 4th children when they stopped. Child, when they stopped. These protests to protect old growth forests from wood chipping and pulp were from the Great Southern to Central Perth, becoming militant and violent as the years went on. The Manjimup police station was torched, people chained themselves to trees for months and stood in front of machinery. The 2001 election was won by the Gallop Labor government on their policy to protect these old growth forests. Talking to the Manjimup elders, the pain was still evident and the industry has never fully recovered. Communities and families were ripped apart, hundreds lost jobs, and the industry now is much smaller. Environmentally, of course, there were many positives, pushing the industry to make much needed changes. But in my experience, the public perception is still stuck in a time warp. The majority of people do not know that we have a locally sourced sustainable timber industry, that old growth forests are protected, that there is timber certification, or that WA's native forests have been managed in a way that allows for multiple uses that balance conservation and production values since that time. At the same time, in the 70s, our local brick industry saw a marketing opportunity and commenced a campaign that was brilliant and has stayed with us with slight modifications for the past 50 years. Now, I'm not sure this is going to work because the internet's not great, but I want to show you one of these ads. If it doesn't, I'll just have to explain it to you. Basically the Midland brick, oh, it's going to work. It's very exciting. Just listen. That working? Not working. Oh no. Okay. So, okay, Greg has just told me that it didn't work, but essentially the premise of this ad, and there were so many of them, is that you knock on the wall, and you say, hey, it's hollow, it's not brick, it doesn't hold its value. These ads went on for decades, and there's still ones at the moment. That's okay. Yeah, no, I know. Yeah. So in February 2020, moving on from the brick ads, in February 2020, the UDIA with some potentially conflicted developers commissioned EY to undertake a cost-benefit analysis, comparing what they called the modern methods of construction compared to standard double brick construction, which is the norm. Note that the modern method is timber-framed construction, which is ridiculous, as we have ample evidence of timber-framed housing dating back to the early 1800s. In any case, the outcomes were predictable. Double brick is cheaper, the industry doesn't have the experience to change the methods, but timber is fast. It is faster, they did agree, and does offer more space to sell. Already delayed by a year here in WA, the National Construction Code 2019 was to be rolled out on May 1st, 2020, when the UDIA and the HIA, not the Institute of Architects or the MBA, advocated for the government to delay the NCC for another 12 months and then another 6 months, so late 2021, citing COVID's impact on the industry. Needless to say, we are therefore well behind the nation in respect of energy efficiency in our homes. While simultaneously benefiting from the state and federal government stimulus packages that have resulted in a once-in-a-generation boom in WA, most project builders continue to work to the NCC 2016 with little energy efficiency. BGC is one of the biggest home builders and have indicated that when the NCC 22 is rolled out, they are likely to have to diversify into framed housing because double brick houses will not perform without significant extra cost. So that is where we're at. But there are many advocating for change, including the architectural profession, the local timber industry, and for the first time for a long time, the state government. The current, and it would be fair to say after the weekend's election shellacking the state government for the next decade at least, McGowan's government, Labor government, has proactively advocated for the timber industry. From designing and constructing a timber frame 7-star demonstration house to initiating policies such as the JAMA plan to ignite, sorry, no pun intended, and promote the forestry industry and stress the importance of health and wellbeing properties of timber and biophilic design. The strategic plan is inspired and informed by the Noongar concept of JAMA, or the interconnected relationship of people, forests and woodlands, and integrates traditional Aboriginal knowledge with scientific research for environmental sustainability, offering new opportunities for the employment and economic development for traditional owners. The wood encouragement policy is a key action item of the JAMA plan and has targets with teeth, encouraging the use of responsibly sourced wood in construction and fit out of buildings, aligning with their buy local policy. The policy also explains the benefits of using timber, including sustainability, energy efficiency, the effect on climate change, the health and well-being effects, that is biophilic design effects, and the efficiency of building and timber. In 2018, the Workplaces Wellness and Wood Equals Productivity report prepared by Pollinate for Forest and Wood Products Australia and the WA government as part of the JAMA plan is the first large-scale survey of 1,000 typical indoor Australian workers and investigates the connection to and potential of biophilic design and the use of timber to improve physical and mental health and well-being. The report found that workers in places with more wood, plants, natural light had high levels of satisfaction. They feel more connected to nature. What's happening? You're right. What's happening? I'm moving them as we go.
Yeah, just go to
what's wrong?
present slide.
Oh, okay, that's that one.
Yeah.
What do you see?
Oh, just getting to go to full screen.
Yes, this full screen, it's a good thing. We might just keep going, but I apologise for that. I'm not sure what's happening here. It's not actually the custom slideshow, the present online. No,
Yeah,
it's not letting me go to that, so I apologise for that. Where were we? Basically, the productivity report showed that, that there were people in workplaces with more wood, plants, natural light had high levels of satisfaction, feel more connected to nature, have more positive association with their workplace, high levels of well-being, take less leave, high levels of concentration, improved mood and personal productivity. The Planet Arc report, I'm just going to give this one last thing. No, it's definitely not doing it for me today, so I apologise for that. The Planet Arc report for forest and wood products, wood housing, health and humanity is also a worthwhile read. While not relating directly to the theory of biophilic design, the intersection between the benefits of using timber internally in the report and the theory of biophilia are remarkable. I had no choice but to love wood. I grew up in a house designed in the 60s by my architect father, a Sydney school or nuts and berry house, style of house hidden behind native gum trees, designed as an open plan, free flowing split level home around a central landscape courtyard. The skillion tiled roof pavilions were supported by exposed jarrah beamed ceilings, huge jarrah frame glazed windows and exposed clinker bricks. My family home grounded my love of timber and the interrelationship of architecture, interiors and landscaping, which still informs my practices work today. My family's home, but it also demonstrated the constraints of a natural material that in our case was never maintained in a house 750 metres from the ocean. I'm also inspired by the natural beauty of our Australian bush, our big West Australian skies, the stunning sunsets over the Indian Ocean and beautiful light, the simplicity of Japanese architecture where the architectural structure forms and informs the interior design, and of course my clients and their sites' contexts and their lives. My ethos is that great architecture nourishes people's lives, not only physically but spiritually and emotionally. I want the houses that we design to express harmony, warmth and a calm simplicity. I believe that good architecture is good for you. But what is the theory of biophilic design and where did it come from? I need to say here, I am not an expert. I haven't done a PhD in this, but I have always been interested in it. And when initially researching for the Wood Solutions talk in 2019, it was a revelation to find that something that has so innately grounded my architecture design style has the scientific evidence to back it up. Like all architects, I love a bit of post-design rationalisation of my work, and now I have it. But a quick history lesson. Aristotle was the first, so to speak, claiming biophilia as the love of life. In the 70s, German-born American psychoanalyst Erich Fromm in The Anatomy of Human Destructiveness was the first to define biophilia as the passionate love of life and all that is alive. However, Harvard professor and Pulitzer Prize winner Professor Edward Wilson, is seen as the grandfather of the theory, defining biophilia as an innate love of life and the natural world. The baton then passed to the late Professor of Social Ecology of the Yale School of Forestry and Environmental Studies, Professor Stephen Kellert, who further developed the theory of evolutionary psychology in the Biophilia Hypothesis, published in 1993, with his mentor, Professor Wilson. Kellert's hypothesis is the idea that humans have an innate attraction to nature due to our evolutionary dependence on it for survival and personal fulfillment, and this attraction holds the key to our aesthetic, intellectual, cognitive, and even spiritual satisfaction. To put it simply, our attraction to nature and biophilia as a philosophy could be defined as the feeling of your toes sinking into cool, soft sand, or the richness and diversity of colour across the landscapes at sunset, the wonder of intricate patterns on a shell that make living things both functional and beautiful, or the feeling of calm as you walk in the bush. Working with schools of architecture, Professor Kellert believed that in architecture, biophilic design was a sustainable design strategy that not only connects people within our built environment and communities, it was good for the health and well-being of all those that inhabited our buildings. He felt biophilic design should be a necessary complement to green architecture, because while decreasing the environmental impact of the built world, green architecture does not address the human reconnection with the natural world, which biophilic design does. Creating a framework where nature in the built environment is used in a way that satisfies human needs, Kellert's principles are meant to celebrate and show respect for nature and provide an enriching urban environment that is multi-sensory. His theory is so broad that it equally relates to cities, large and small buildings, and even personal activities like bushwalking. Wilson and Kellert's research suggested that a strong connection to nature is vitally important to our health and well-being. But as the world's population continues to urbanise, we are spending up to 90% of our time indoors, more so through COVID, obviously. So creating more opportunities to connect with nature in the spaces and places where we spend most of our time is a no-brainer. So how does the timber industry, timber in architecture, fit into this theory? As we don't have time to go into all the fine detail of the Biophilia hypothesis, I thought I'd give you a taster in case you wish to investigate further. The theory has three principles. Just get this done. Which have several attributes. The first principle, I'm just going to try from here, see if that works. Nope. The first principle is the direct experience of nature. It's a tangible contact with nature through natural light, air, water, plants and animals, and natural ecosystems and fire. Principle two is the indirect experience of nature. This is where you can have contact with nature through photos, natural materials and colours inside. He found in his research that people prefer natural materials like stone, brass and leather that are susceptible to the patina of age. This change invokes positive responses from people. Other opportunities for indirect experience include simulations of natural light and fresh air, repetitive and varied patterns and naturalistic shapes, invoking nature by using materials that mimic nature called biomimicry. The image on the side here is of a house we did in Bedfordale, and it's a lap pool, and the ceiling is in fact designed around the Milky Way. It was a client request, and all the windows look out into bush with the green mosaics that evoke this feeling of you're walking in the bush. Principle three is the experience of space and place. This principle relates particularly to architecture and design's ability to enhance well-being. The main attributes are of prospect and refuge. Refuge refers to the building's ability to provide comfortable and nurturing spaces. Prospect. Oh, I've changed that around. Yes, sorry. Prospect emphasises horizons, movement and sources of danger. Examples of design elements include providing long vistas to native vegetation at the end of a long corridor, the use of balcony, alcoves or lighting linked to circadian rhythm, say in psychiatric wards. Refuge refers to the building's ability to provide comfortable and nurturing interiors, and these can include using timber or really considering the spaces we design to make them functional and more humanistic. The use of wood in architecture falls under this principle as an element from nature that through minimal processing reflects the local ecology or geology to create a distinct sense of place from where it came. And as we already know from the Planet Arc research, spaces that use timber feel rich, warm and authentic and are good for our health and well-being in addition to looking beautiful. This image to the left is actually of looking through from a courtyard into the entry area, evoking planting and pool and water and the colour of the bush outside. Oops. The other design principles, which we won't go into in great detail, are organised complexity. This is done in design through repetition and change and detail of the building's architecture. Integration of parts is where interior design elements use clear boundaries and or the integration of a central focal point like a sculpture or water feature. Transitional spaces, this element aims to connect interior and exterior spaces by blurring the lines. Create comfort by providing access from one space to another using decks, bridges, fenestrations and foyers, and mobility. It ensures the ability for people to comfortably move between spaces even when complex by providing a feeling of security. And this could be in large courtyards or in public open spaces where people are feeling insecure. Cultural and ecological attachment to a place is when, as architects, we create a sense of place in the built environment by incorporating the area's geography, history in the design. Each of these experiences are meant to be considered individually when using biophilia in projects, as there is no one right answer for one building type. Each building architect and project owner must collaborate to include the biophilic principles they believe fit within their scope and most effectively reach their occupants. Professor Kellert believed we will never be truly healthy, satisfied or fulfilled if we live apart and alienated from the environment from which we evolved. He believed that biophilic design points the way towards creating healthy and productive habitats for humans. While it's argued to have a wealth of benefits, it's the proven health and well-being benefit that our connection to nature can have that's so striking and important. There is ample evidence we're incorporating biophilic design principles. I'm just going to do this, see if this is working. There is ample evidence where biophilic design principles in the built environment is not just a luxury, but a sound economic investment in health and productivity based on well-researched neurological and physiological evidence, as we've discussed today. But how to? The inclusion of plants in interior environments. Just so you know, these are my projects as we're scrolling through now. The inclusion of plants in the interior environments reduce stress and increase pain tolerance. The use of water elements incorporating views of nature are also mentally restorative. Hospitals that allow patients to heal more quickly by simply giving them a view to nature. Offices that boost creativity and productivity. Schools that improve students' learning and grades. And retail outlets with higher sales or homes where there is a sense of retreat and calm. These are not just throwaway statements. These have actually got research behind them, which is amazing. The environmental benefits include reduction of carbon emissions, increase in biodiversity, sustainability, better infiltration, reduction in heat absorption, and a resurgence in critters like bees and butterflies. Any negatives? Well, it's a fact that installing timber as a decorative element or any element internally or externally into your architecture will increase the cost in supply and maintenance. Often good design does. But to me, the monetary impact is far outweighed by the things we've discussed already today. As an architect that starts and finishes every project examining and detailing the site's geological context, its climate, wind and sun patterns, native vegetation, history and existing ecosystems of our client site along with their brief, I really sort of get biophilic design. I also know that for many architects, this type of holistic design is innate. There are, of course, others that would never have considered the effect of their architecture on the mental health and well-being of the end user. I've met a few in my work as a presenter on Channel 10's Australia by Design TV show. They are generally incredibly famous architects, often lovely. Their architecture is big, bold, and look at me. in my experience, it appears that the interior design is not something that they're too concerned about as long as it meets the functional brief and doesn't affect the exterior architecture. Okay, it's maybe a gross generalisation, but we're not, you get my drift, we're not all the same. In a country with an ageing population, with health issues and an increasing population of young people presenting with depressive disorders, particularly in a time after the last year, I believe that the benefits of biophilic design are extraordinary and will, in the long run, reduce the cost to taxpayers. I'm just changing this. Taxpayers' purse. I'm heartened that the WA state government understands the economic and heartened that the WA state government understands the economic and social benefits of this theory, and that the building industry be strongly encouraged to use the elements of biophilia in their projects. But let's get real. The only way that the residential project building industry is going to incorporate a theory that may increase upfront costs is either by mandated state legislation or certification requiring healthy buildings. The WA state government's JAMA plan is a leap in the right direction. Overseas, in large multinationals, the movement has already started. Organisations such as Google and others are beginning to incorporate the concept into their standards and rating systems to encourage building professionals to actually use them and use biophilia in their projects. I was surprised to see that there is recognised certification as well. As of now, the most important prominent supporters of biophilic design are the Well Building Standard and the Living Building Challenge. The International Well Building Institute uses biophilic design in their Well Standard as a qualitative and quantitative metric. The qualitative metric must incorporate nature, environmental elements like timber, natural lighting and spatial qualities, natural patterns, interaction with nature within and outside the building. For the quantitative portion, projects must have indoor and outdoor landscaping and water features. Verification is enforced through assurance letters by the architects and the owners and by on-spot site checks. The Living Building Challenge calls for the creation of a buildings project at all scales that operate as cleanly, beautifully and efficiently as nature's architecture. It proposes a question: what if every single act of design and construction made the world a better place? A rigorous building standard that aims to maximise building performance. The standard classifies the use of timber in biophilic design, the biophilic environment, as an imperative element in the health and happiness section. The Living Building Challenge requires its occupants to connect to nature directly and indirectly through interaction within the interior and exterior of the building. They are then verified through to a preliminary audit procedure. In April 2017, the Crosswork document was prepared to simplify the process for us, architects and designers, for new buildings that are seeking the Living Building Challenge certification, the Well Building Standard approval, and a Green Star design and as built certified. The challenge asks us to employ the precautionary principle that if we're not sure about a chemical or product's toxicity or health impacts, we shouldn't use it. Our clients are demanding this now. They're more than ever. The Declare label is a transparent ingredients label for building products, and it would be great if the timber industry could help us with this or something similar. I see these forms of certification as aspirational, as a point of difference with our competitors and the right thing to do for our grandchildren. As architects, our projects generally commence with a very expensive champagne brief and a cheap beer budget, and continue until we get to a beautiful, fine West Australian wine, much like here at Lewin Estate, one of our projects. That's the compromise. We are trained in design thinking and problem solving, being inspired and inspiring simultaneously to find the perfect solution to the many project variables of a client's project and budget, the community and the planet. We are the jack of all trades, knowing a little about a lot. As a profession, we are in the most part good, caring, committed global citizens on the front line. We can and want to do the right thing in a changing landscape. We care deeply about the environment and our local suppliers. But it's difficult to find the time in this fast-paced world with low margins, a lot of white noise, spruiking the latest and often contradictory research to keep up to date. I only read this week, when writing this lecture, a commentary on Fifth Estate by Poppy Johnson, that while timber is simple, natural, this is to quote, simple, natural and beautiful material used since time immemorial for our building and furniture needs, it is now a hotbed of political passions. While being cast as a saviour material for greener buildings, some are questioning timber's true environmental value. The article discussed recent rumblings that there are issues with long-term toxicity of chemicals used for treating white ants, questions about the carbon abatement calculations, the end-of-life disposal, forest management and sustainability verification, importation, and the carbon emissions associated with that. Some even say the carbon calculators are wrong, that trees are like people. They use a load of carbon in their early days while they're young and growing vigorously, but as they get older, they become less efficient and stop absorbing carbon so readily, much like menopausal women. But anyway, so to my rallying call, I say, as architects, we are at the front line and we need the industry's help to help educate, inform, and engage with our clients. We need the most up-to-date research, data presented in a way that is easy to translate, factual, and relevant. We need to know what suppliers are supplying which products and from where. We need independent industry advice and analysis supporting those suppliers that are doing the right thing. We need the latest research and government policies affecting where we work and what we are designing. We need to understand the true narrative behind the forestry industry, its sustainability methods, long-term plans, published on all forms of social media, other industry publications, and even through sponsorship of design industry groups. We need the industry to engage with our allied professions, especially structural engineers, as they are often the ones that stymie the architect's design intent to use timber as the structural element in place of steel. I mean, that is changing in the East Coast, but we're only starting here in WA, and there's very few structural engineers with the experience and the knowledge to help us. We need to know how the timber industry is engaging with the circular economy, climate emergency discussions, carbon abatement schemes, and end-of-life disposal schemes now and into the future. We're in the midst of a pivotal moment in our history. Our planet depends on us reconnecting with our living natural life support system rather than its destruction. And the timber industry is in a prime position to help us. The timber industry is in a prime position and the architectural profession is at the front end. Help us to help you to make our world just a little bit better. Thank you all, and I apologise that my monitor wasn't working, but I hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you very much, Suzie, for your presentation. And we'd like to now encourage any questions that anybody does have. Suzie, I was just going to ask, in regard to the feedback from your clients, having lived in your homes where we give that consideration to the biophilic design and to that nature consideration within the living home, what sort of feedback do you get from your clients?
Look, you know, I don't think I've ever said to the clients, "Oh, this is biophilic design. This is what we're doing. This is just how we design." I think it's important that you know, we're still following their context. I mean, I think because of our website, we attract clients that like timber and like the energy that our architecture evolves. we often have quite an older demographic. In fact, often it is the last house, and we've had clients turning 80. One of them, it was their first house he ever built with his wife. And we've just had another client turn 80, another client in their quite a few clients in their 70s. And I think they feel that health and well-being, and that when you talk to them about, you know, materials that we're using, and you explain to them without explaining the whole thing of biophilic design, they feel at peace. And, you know, for our demographic, it is feeling at peace. And it's about their last house where we're often doing aging in place, and we're future-proofing it for carers and for family to come and stay. They can't travel as much, obviously not at all now. So they always say to me, and the general push is that, and particularly in a project like this one, I'm just going to pull up a slide here. This one here. Oh, I'm not sharing my screen, am I? Is that you actually have this beautiful feeling. Can you still hear me, Greg? That you have this beautiful feeling, and that they feel calm, and that's a fantastic thing.